lovely lunch and are ready for the second half of our day today. So we're going to start off with using the rubric, the Self-Reflection Rubric for dialogue and reflection. That's the rubric that Dr. Olmsted introduced briefly at the end of her presentation. So I would like to welcome up Alicia Osere, who is the Senior Manager of Training for the California Collaborative for Educational Excellence, and she's going to walk us through that process. Welcome, Alicia.
Good afternoon. It's tough being after lunch. But at least I'm right after lunch and your eyelids haven't started to fall yet, so I'm feeling pretty good about that. So as Gina said, my name is Alicia Osere. I'm a senior manager for the California Collaborative for Educational Excellence. And just so you know, the CCEE supports the work of the roadmap and the work that we do in supporting school districts in need of support. If you aren't aware, the CCEE is a relatively new agency. We started about 3 years ago, and 5 years ago. 2013, it was created, and it began to add staff probably about 3 years ago, and I was last at it a year ago, so I've been there a year. And LCFF and LCAP created the California Collaborative. What we do is we offer some personalized, on-time support for school districts so they can take ownership of their continuous improvement process. We play a key role in the statewide system of support. Now, the statewide system of support is comprised of county offices of education, the CDE, and the CCEE. So 3 entities make up the statewide system of support. As an entity that has specific responsibilities, but we work together as well with the statewide system of support to provide all districts with additional help and differentiated assistance. So we don't want to go into districts and tell them what to do, but to be a side-by-side partner to help them improve in the areas in which they need to improve. So today, I'm here to kind of get you into this self-reflection tool and really take a look at that. We did a little crosswalk of the LCAP, and now that you've been able to kind of get into that and look at that a little bit, you can see how your current practices, we're going to look at how your current practices align to the EL roadmap. So we're going to engage in some dialogue as a team and look at any areas you might see as a need for improvement. So in your binder, the rubric is available. I think it's under this section, which is section 6. It allows school districts and programs to identify strengths and weaknesses in the EL policies, programs, and practices. While the dashboard gives you some idea of how you're doing on supporting EL students, this rubric kind of gives you a more in-depth way of looking at it. So in your binder, you'll see a copy of the self-reflection tool. And it's designed to look at each principle, element by element. So does everyone have the rubric in front of them? And you're able to see element by element what's laid out in the self-reflection tool. So take a moment and look at principle 1, element A. Starting from the left, each element is followed by a description of the level of implementation for the implement. So the levels of implementation is level 1, meaning minimal or not at all. Level 2, meaning somewhat responsive. Number 3, meaning responsive. And number 4, meaning very responsive. So thinking about that and those levels of performance, on the right side of the rubric includes a place to make notes. So you can kind of write notes there about what's your evidence, what your thoughts are, why do you think that you would score in that manner. So we're going to take some time for you to get into this rubric and think about your LEA or LEAs that you know of. I notice we have a lot of county offices. So maybe think of a particular LEA or maybe a particular set of LEAs that you are familiar with. So each team member, you're going to focus on one principle. Focus on the same principle you had earlier when we did the deep dive and we were all at separate tables and we were looking at each of the principles. So think about that principle that you were looking at and use that as your area that you're going to go into. And this will help because you guys all split up at your tables, so it should be pretty even in terms of getting into the rubric around your LEA discussion. So read over the rubric section that corresponds to the principle you selected. As you read, please circle, check, or highlight where you believe your LEA performs. Remember, you're selecting where you think your LEA is from your role, the perspective of your role. And be prepared to share where you place your LEA in each element and why. So if you're an administrator, you're looking at it through the lens of an administrator. If you're a teacher, you're looking at it through the lens of a teacher. If you're a coach, you're looking at it through the lens of a coach, okay? Questions? Awesome. You've all used rubrics before. We're all really good at this. I understand. So you have 10 minutes to rate your district and figure out where you are in the principle that you are connected with. Who wants to share some of the discussion they had or thoughts they had around determining where your LEA is in relation to the area you were looking at? Not everyone volunteer at once.
We were just saying that our development is not consistent from area to area, that we have several areas that we're much farther along in than others, and that we would really benefit from bringing this rubric to our leaders and our teachers and just starting these conversations.
I think in my context, it would be helpful to have a step preceding this one, and that basically would be identifying each element and then actions that the district is currently doing to support those elements, and actions, the next steps for each action, and then looking at this based on that data to make an informed assessment of where they fall on the rubric.
Were you thinking, when you were doing the deep dive around the 4 principles, were you thinking about what are some of the things we're doing in our LEA? Because I think going through that will also lead to what you're talking about. Others? You already started to think about, whoa. I must have went too fast. Oh. You already started to think about some strengths and gaps for your schools and districts. What level of implementation are you at with each of the elements and why? So when you share, put where you put your LEA and why you put your LEA there. Depending on your lens, your questions around this rubric might be different. So if you look at the rubric, it's very easy for schools. It's very conducive for schools. If you're a district, though, you need to be asking yourself, if all of my schools are going to perform at the highest level possible on this rubric, what supports do I need to provide? If you're a county-wide person, what supports do you need to provide districts and schools if they're going to perform at that level? Because some of our instructional teams and some of our site leaders may look at the rubric and say, I don't have control over some of these things. And so we want to take away excuses as much as we can and provide the support that we can for people to excel at the levels that we are expecting them to excel. So just to throw out a different lens to use to look at that in terms of where you are and the supports you're providing to either students or staff or leaders for that matter. So I heard some people talk about how they could use, this rubric in their district. Maybe have a little bit more discussion about at what level and what supports you might be able to provide around the use of this rubric in your LEA. I'm going to give you 5 minutes for that discussion. Who came up with what they think is a really innovative way to use this rubric? Innovative ideas for using the rubric. Or just an irregular idea? Was it innovative? Too much pressure, right? Okay, sorry. Like, what's innovation? It's okay.
Was that a maybe hand?
We were saying we could use this with our EL site coordinators.
Oh, okay.
And maybe having them bring this back to share with teachers and making them more aware of what's expected.
So creating awareness.
Yes, creating awareness. And then from there, making it something that's brought throughout the year, not just a one-time thing, but throughout the year, bringing it back to show that integration.
Awesome. We're
throughout
going
all
to
of
do
the
a little culturally
conversations.
responsive instruction here. So shout out to her. One clap.
Oh, you guys can do better than that now. Come on now.
Can we do a clap all together? Like we all know how to clap? Clap. Okay,
There we
next
go.
idea. Another idea over here.
We were talking about with our administrators and analyzing what we had or didn't have and what we did not have, like prioritizing what we really needed to do next, but then looking at our school site plans,
Awesome.
right? And
Clap.
saying where is it? So
Clap. Thank you. Awesome. Next.
Okay, I try to hand the mic to my colleagues,
I
but they
saw
won't
that.
take it.
That
They
was
both
good.
had good ideas, and so I'm going to share their ideas. One was that to look at we're instructional coaches, and we have our director here as well, but to look at this through our lens as coaches, and what could we do personally in our work with teachers in schools to move it along the continuum on the rubric.
Looking at the mirror first.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. And then this is too overwhelming to share at once. Right. So another idea was if we shared the centerfold, which we think is a great pictorial, is the infograph. Okay, I called it pictorial. That's my yeah, okay, look at Lori for that one. She knows what I'm talking about. And then just, if they chose a couple elements, just give them that one page of the rubric as they chose the element. Where are you and where do you want to go?
Yeah.
And how are you going to get there?
Awesome. Thank you for sharing, Clap. Now, why is that culture responsive? Because one, we love to give shout outs to people, and two, it gets everybody doing something, right? So I just wanted to add that little piece. Next, we're going to have Lori come up and introduce Section 7 to you. Thank you so much.